Hey everyone, Paul Wilson here. I make YouTube videos about e-learning, specifically Adobe Captivate. If you like what I do, I encourage you to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and feel free to share this with all your e-learning buddies. So I don't do a lot of live streams. I do, the occasional live stream where I talk about, what's sort of happening in the industry, what's sort of happening with my YouTube channel, and that's pretty much why I'm here today. So mostly it's just me having a chat with all of you. You'll notice that there's a chat functionality with YouTube's live stream software, for lack of a better word. Feel free to ask me your questions right in the chat there. Looks like we have a few supporters recently who've joined. Hospi Report, MPSI, Sante Social, Lead Angela. Not sure if these are people's first names, last names, or just what they've called their YouTube presence. So welcome, of course, to those folks as well. I appreciate all the support that my viewers give me, not just by subscribing to the YouTube channel, which is great. That's fantastic. I'll be talking a little bit about subscribing to the channel today, but also to those who are members of my YouTube channel. And these are folks who've decided to, support me in some way, whether it's $1 a month or $5 a month for the all-in-one. Of course, different currencies, different amounts there, but appreciate it because you've allowed me to turn what was mostly a hobby into a big portion of my business as the Captivate teacher guy. So for that, I'm very appreciative and thankful for anyone who's shown me support. So being that we're just about New Year's at this point, not quite, but a day away. There's a few topics that I sort of want to cover in kind of like a year in review, but obviously it's a little bit longer than that. And I'll jump right into that in just a second here. Also, Terry Miller just gave me a shout out there. Hi, Paul, Terry, and Penny Miller here. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining the live stream today. Again, I appreciate all the viewers, subscribers, supporters, whoever it might be here. So let's talk a little bit about where we're at with Adobe Captivate and my YouTube channel and other things related to Adobe Captivate. So this is really more like a 14-year in review because at the very beginning of all of this, of course, all of us who've been using Adobe Captivate for years to come, or have covered years of using Adobe Captivate. I know I started using Adobe Captivate in 2005, I think it was, where it was version 2.0. I skipped over 2, 3, and 4, and continued to use other software at the same time. A lot of times when you're an e-learning designer developer, whether you are freelance or not, back then, of course, I worked for a corporation, and you used what they gave you. It wasn't a question of hey, I get to pick this software. A lot of times it's an economic decision, and for us, Adobe Captivate was a reasonable choice cost-wise, the company that I worked for. And I was informed by my manager that, oh yeah, starting next week, we're going to be using Adobe Captivate to develop our e-learning. And, so that was 2005. Now I'm going to fast forward quickly through this part. I don't want to get you to think that, oh, geez, he's just going to do this nostalgic trip down memory lane. I want to jump ahead to 2010 when Steve Jobs wrote a letter to the entire mobile market community and expressed his thoughts on Shockwave Flash, which was Adobe's primary method of publishing multimedia content for the web. And, Flash had its day. It was a very powerful tool. It sucked up a lot of processing power, which I think is what what Steve Jobs was concerned about, and others as well. He's just probably the most famous of those. And he decided that for Apple mobile devices from 2010 moving forward, he was not going to allow flash technology to run on his mobile devices, whether we're talking about the early versions of the iPhone. I'm not sure if we had iPads by 2010, but obviously that would ultimately be included in that group. And this began the rapid decline of this technology. So Flash started to disappear. Within 2 years, Adobe Captivate, I believe it was version 6, it might have been version 7, they started offering HTML5 publishing as an option so that you could not only deliver the content that you were developing for your e-learning for desktop computers, but they wanted to start exploring, okay, if people are going to be remote, they might have an iPhone or an Android. How do we service those folks with Adobe Captivate? So Captivate started to give you the opportunity to choose HTML5 or Shockwave Flash, or a hybrid of both, which was kind of interesting, which kind of worked. I had a little bit of experience with that. And then there was a point where with Adobe Captivate 2019, which is the one most of us probably first used, I don't know if it was update 5 or update 6, somewhere in there, that you could no longer publish to Shockwave Flash. The truth was that Adobe simply turned off this functionality because the writing was on the wall for the Flash team, so they discontinued Adobe Flash, they discontinued Flash Player. Flash Player was discontinued, I think it was 2020, January of 2020. And so you could no longer download a fresh copy of Flash Player. And it wasn't, I think it was about a year later where literally, even if you had Flash Player installed, it stopped functioning. So everything to do with, the Flash Player itself just stopped functioning. So therefore, if you were an Adobe Captivate user, you could still publish to Shockwave Flash, but you were pretty much assured that that was not going to function. And one thing I think a lot of people forget about Adobe Captivate 2019, it came out actually in 2018. So when we were still using Adobe Captivate 2019, or version 11, if you will, as early or as late as 2 years ago, this is pretty old technology at that point. And I know that there were a lot of people, because I spend a lot of time on the forums, looking at what people are saying, asking questions, because that's the inspiration for my videos. There was a lot of people complaining about the fact that we're still using this software, which in my mind still seemed new. I don't know why that is. I probably used Adobe Captivate 2019 more than anybody else, because not only was I developing content, but I was creating tutorials about it as well. But clearly, when you look at the playlists on my YouTube channel, you'll see that there's a heck of a lot more Adobe Captivate 2019 videos than any other version of Adobe Captivate. I didn't start making YouTube videos until Captivate 8. I did a few for Captivate 8. I did some for Captivate 9, obviously 2017, which was version 10. And then version 11, which is 2019, which was the longest period of time for a single release of Adobe Captivate, at least in my memory. They were very quick to come out with new versions. One of the challenges, of course, is that with the all-new Adobe Captivate, which we now know is, what used to be called Project Charm, was that it required a complete rewrite of the code base. Like, you couldn't rely on, Adobe Captivate 2019 to truly be a pure HTML5 publishing solution, because underneath, it's like trying to remove all the nerves and arteries and veins in a human body. It's so mixed in there that, it would have been impossible to simply update the code base of 2019 and remove Shockwave Flash. So they did their best to hide it, but it was really still there. So they really knew that for the next major release of Adobe Captivate, they had to come out with something entirely new. They couldn't rely on that old code base any longer. Interestingly enough, some of the same bugs are still there. I don't know if it's just because they've reused some of the code base. I'm not sure. But even today, when we use Adobe Captivate Classic, because as many of you know, the all-new Adobe Captivate is what I would describe as incomplete software. Their goal, Adobe's goal, is to have software parity from the new version or from the old version to the new version sometime around 2027. That's the date that's been floated around. Now, it may end up being 2028. It might be 2029. Who knows? A lot of it has to do with how adept they are at coming up with these new solutions for old features. But the good news is, and I think it's a good solution, let's offer our clients for the same low single price, a solution that gives them all the old legacy stuff, if that's what they need for this particular project or that particular project. But let's start to introduce the new stuff so that they're not sitting around waiting for a new release while other authoring tools are surpassing Adobe at a tremendous rate. So I think it was a good solution. It was the right solution at the time. But of course, I'm looking to the future. I'm not thinking too much about Classic. When a client approaches me and says, Paul, I need you to develop an e-learning course and it needs to have this, 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 and this. Those features, if they fall within the Adobe Captivate Classic software, obviously that's the software I'm going to have to use, right? In hopes that, what we think of as Project Charm or the all-new Adobe Captivate or just Captivate 12, if you will, it will have it eventually, but it may not be there, or it may not be as fully developed as you would prefer it to be, So there are some things that just aren't there. In fact, just the other day, someone was saying, how do I do a Likert scale, which is, a rating scale, on a scale of 1 to 5, how did you rate this course? That was a built-in question type that you could have in Adobe Captivate Classic. It's not there in the all-new Adobe Captivate. You can do it. I figured out that there is a solution for that, but it does require a custom solution. So, so just looking at the chat here, going back to a little bit about Steve Jobs there, he knows that Flash enables macros to run on the operating system. Behind the scenes, malicious Flash could run bad things behind the scene. Microsoft continued to allow it, most notably in PowerPoint. And the big thing was the processing power. Like Flash just sucks up your CPU. Back in the days when you could actually run Flash and take a look at it, it was very clear that it was slowing down perfectly fine computers, making them suddenly slow machines. So that was a big part of it. But yeah, at the very beginning, before the all-new Captivate 12 came out, it was very much perceived that Adobe's development was slow to this. Because I remember back in 2021, around the time of what I believe was the Adobe Learning Conference that fall, which was at a point when we were sort of still in the pandemic and, there wasn't actually live events going on. This was something that was recorded by the illustrious Pooja Jaising, actually, as a sneak peek of what was coming. We got to see a video, and you can find this on YouTube. I can probably link it in the description below for those that watch this after the fact. But it's a neat video showing you what was coming. And it was a sneak peek of what was ultimately going to be Adobe Captivate 12. They called it Project Charm, and that was sort of a code name, if you will, a beta name for this product. And it was very intriguing. It gave us a glimpse into this new user interface. It was very exciting to see, and I was excited. I already knew that we were gonna have to see this come out much later than they were sneak peeking it. You know, they promised in that video, if I remember correctly, that they'll start beta testing in January of 2022, and that was true. Some of us got to see it in 2022, very early. I wouldn't even call it beta test. It would more be like an alpha test where you got to see sort of the technology. It was like a technology preview, but you couldn't really design anything, like a complete e-learning project because there was so much not finished. But you could try some things out to see how things would work. And I had a chance to see that. Now, a lot of people didn't get to see that. So to them, the promise of Project Charm in January of 2022 was a false promise because, they mentioned this very openly on a public video that this was coming, and it did come, but just not for everyone. A lot of people thought of it as, almost like vaporware, which is something like software that was promised and never appears. And there's videos on YouTube about that. Where is this Project Charm? Various other e-learning influencers, not unlike myself, also like wondering, hey, we were told this thing was coming. It's not coming. I don't see it. And I kept trying to say to people, because obviously I'm under NDA at one point, and I can't talk about it publicly, but I would say things like, well, sometimes these pre-releases are by invitation only, and you might not be, trying not to insult people, but, some of us are getting to see it, and it's usually the folks who are, not too unlike myself, where they are well known in the industry as Adobe Captivate users, which was me certainly at the time. Around the same time, I was really kind of discouraged because my YouTube channel, which I'd been doing for quite a number of years by that point, kind of stalled. I sort of hit the mid-20s as far as thousands of subscribers, and it just sort of really slowed down where, 6 months would go by and I might get 1,000 more subscribers. And I think partly that has to do with Adobe Captivate. Like, it was the focus of my YouTube channel. It still is the focus of my YouTube channel. But there was just no growth because the software wasn't growing either. So my YouTube channel, I was like thinking, oh, do I want to switch gears and start being, thearticulateteacher.com or do something entirely different? And it was really close. Like, it was... Yeah, I think maybe it's time to switch gears and take a look at other options. But, I'd been using Adobe for so long. I was so ingrained in it. I just couldn't really imagine myself not using Adobe Captivate. So that was probably the one thing that saved my YouTube channel. But one of my goals at the time, very early on my YouTube channel, was 100,000 subscribers. I was beginning to think that wasn't going to happen. So let's fast forward a little bit now. So there was quite a few opportunities for me to test the software. I remember spring of 2022 or somewhere around there, there was a call with the marketing department at Adobe that I was invited to, along with people who also are, noted Adobe Captivate users as well. And I remember one of my colleagues in that group asked, so can we expect to see this in time for the Adobe Learning Summit in 2022? And the marketing guy, probably not the best way to handle it, laughed out loud. Like that. And I thought, oh, well, that's pretty unprofessional. So clearly they were really behind in the development. And quite frankly, they should have been working on what we call Project Charm or Captivate 12 or whatever. They probably should have started working on it, as early as the release of 2019, which was literally 2018. But I would imagine, like most companies, the Adobe eLearning team was probably totally affected by the pandemic. Getting programmers to sit down and work on brand new software that had never been before during the pandemic while they're working from home probably was not as progressive as you'd hope. I mean, yes, I think productivity is something that can be positively impacted by working from home. But, I think in this case here, when you're designing an entirely new project, that's some serious project management there. You really need people focused, and they might not be, they might be, challenged by that. Yeah, so like News at 11 is just reiterating, you know, the like responsive design was horrible. Likert slide, yeah. So I mean, I don't use them myself. Personally, I think that there are other tools for evaluating learning. But yeah, I could see why some people would need that. And News at 11 is also saying, I thought it was vaporware. Yeah, many people believe that they were just, giving it lip service to try and, squeeze out what little they could out of Captivate 2019 before they discontinued the software entirely. But anyway, very excited. A couple of things I was very concerned about. They were calling it Project Charm. My question to them was, are you going to continue to call it Captivate, right? Because, right, I'm putting, the word Captivate in everything that I did. I'm the Captivate teacher. You go to my website, it's captivateteacher.com. And my YouTube channel, that's easier to change a YouTube channel, but clearly if they're going to rename the software into something else, I need to think about my own branding, and that was a concern. But luckily for me, they stuck with the name Adobe Captivate, so I didn't really need to change anything. And on June 29th, 2023, Adobe launched the all-new Adobe Captivate, which is, as you now know, version 12. Many users were concerned. And again, I was one of them. Like, okay, this is great. We've got something that's going to bridge the gap. But, if you did a side-by-side comparison of what came with Adobe Captivate 12 and what came with Adobe Captivate, we'll just call it 11 for our purposes here, there was a lot of features missing. Virtual reality was such a big deal just a few years earlier when Adobe Captivate 2019 came out, and it was non-existent in the all-new Adobe Captivate. And some features were less refined too, like the quizzing functionality. No random quizzes, which was something, many of us rely on because, you might want to build a series of question pools and draw from those question pools so that the random quiz that you create at least aligns with your learning objectives. And of course, you're testing on all the, each one pool per learning objective, you can test for each learning objective with random questions, and it still works out well. Didn't exist in the all-new Adobe Captivate. Advanced answer options. So if you can kind of do it. There's a little bit of a trick involved in that, but the reality is that if you want to have unique feedback for each specific answer, the default question slide doesn't do that for you. You need a custom solution for that. And there was a lot of those, and it added up to a pretty long list. But the saving grace for Adobe, specifically the eLearning team, was that they made a commitment that every 90 days or so, a new update would come out for Adobe Captivate 12. And they've been pretty consistent with that. And I'll give them an extra month on some of those updates. Like if it, instead of every 3 months, it becomes, this one comes out after 4 months, that's fine with me. As long as you get it right, as long as you keep updating the software and being consistent with, with it being, constantly updated and getting closer, to that feature parity that we've been promised. Yeah, so within a month, Adobe Captivate 12.1 comes out, which included some bug fixes, some minor interface improvements. But at this point, I started to see rapid growth on my YouTube channel. So clearly, the release of a new version of Adobe Captivate, suddenly I'm seeing tremendous growth. People are looking for answers to the question, what is Adobe Captivate? How do I use it? How do I do this? How do I do that? And people are searching, and obviously my YouTube channel's coming up. And even before, I was entirely committed to just doing Adobe Captivate 12 videos. I started to see that growth. So I knew that I had to start jumping on board and coming out with video tutorials about the new software if I was going to take advantage of the uptake in searches for Adobe Captivate solutions. So, and I was lucky. I got that going pretty quickly, and the growth of my channel over the last say almost like year and a half, it's been thereabouts, has been tremendous. I'm now presently at 100, and let's see, what's the current number right now? Let's take a look here. Just to be up to date here, 156,525 subscribers. And before Adobe Captivate 12 came out, it was probably like 30,000 subscribers. So my belief in getting this guy right here, the silver play plaque from YouTube, for recognizing that I had achieved 100,000 subscribers, it was starting to become a pipe dream for me. But I'm very excited. Obviously, around the time that came out, that fantastic, I'm there, and that growth has continued because another 56,000 some odd subscribers have joined since I got my silver play button there, which is, I think, pretty cool. So it was November 14th, 2023. So almost a little bit more than a year ago, Adobe launched 12.2. And I've just got some notes here. Software simulation was greatly improved in that version. We had the ability to make all the objects within software simulation components that you could turn on or off, just like the other blocks in Adobe Captivate. So I could turn on instructions, I could turn on hint captions, I could turn on click boxes or off, and do the same thing for all of the like text input fields and stuff like that. And the cool thing, a lot of people didn't notice this because Adobe's very good at making things not stick in your face. They had the ability where you could add extra copies of those components by using the plus icon next to each one of those. You don't see the plus icon until you hover over it and see that it's something you can do. They improved the image editing, so with images that you've applied to image blocks, you can recrop them, you can resize them to a degree, and you can even pick the focal point within the image, left, right, or center, so that on different device sizes, you'll see it focus on maybe a particular character in that photograph or what have you. The widgets now included title, body, and instruction components with 12.2, and there was improvements in themes. I still think themes have a long way to go. They're not as universal as I'd hope them to be. I can't, for example, change a lot of the components with quiz questions from within themes. And so there's a lot of manual work that still needs to be done to make an e-learning course look and appear a certain way. But, true to form, this year, if we want to just talk about 2024, this year, again, April 4th is when I got my YouTube silver play button, 100,000 subscribers. So in less than a year, my YouTube channel grew by about 75,000 subscribers, which was like amazing. I had never seen that much growth. But around the same time, version 12.3 came out, which offered some improvements also to image editing. You could now export and import closed captions as SRT or VTT files, which is great if you wanted to be able to, like, for example, I use this a lot if I've got a video in Adobe Captivate 12. One of the first things I'll do is I'll export the VTT file, and in case I need to reapply that video to the slide, I don't want to lose all those closed captions. So I save the VTT file and I can import it whenever I wish, along with all the customizations, which is why I prefer VTT over SRT, for those that might be curious about that. I'm sure I have a video about that. And also, too, the ability to import question slides from CSV files. That was something that came out, in version 12.3. To me, the most exciting update was September of this past year, version 12.4. Random question slides and pools. Literally, I was asked by one of the engineers at Adobe who said, Paul, what's holding you back from using version 12 completely, like for all of your e-learning development? And there were two things, and I honestly don't remember what the other one was, but one of them was random question slides. Until you give me random question slides, I can think of at least two of my clients I cannot use the new software for, because that was one of their requirements, was the ability to have these question slides randomized. Also in version 12.4, there was improvements in the padding and layout, and some further improvements in software simulation. In fact, let's take a look here. I think there is a list of what you actually get. I'm just doing that from memory here. But if I type in Adobe Captivate 12.4, release notes here, yeah. So let me share this with you here. Yeah, so this was September 17th, 2024. You can see all the updates here. So there was 12.1. Let's look at that for a moment. That was November 14th, 2023. No, that was not. That was like August of 2023. This has obviously been updated. So they fixed a bunch of things. This was mostly bug fixes. I don't think there were major feature improvements to 12.1. 12.2 came out, and so you can just sort of see the topics on this page here. Simulation workflow enhancements, image workflow enhancements, theme enhancements, widget enhancements. This was a nice one. Remove unused resources, because when you're building an e-learning course, quite frankly, you don't just put the image in once and then move on to the next slide. You might try different images. You might get feedback from your client saying, no, I don't want a female on this page. I want a male person on this page, or vice versa. And you end up with all of this stuff in the library, which we don't see yet. I mean, I'm hoping that someday we'll have access to the library. But, the ability to remove unused resources can greatly keep your project file down size-wise. And I would expect that, while Adobe Captivate has always been pretty good at publishing only what it needs for the final product, having unused resources in the project file probably means that the published version could be, a little large as well. Overlay color in the card widgets, timeline widget, and his support for Mac. Yeah, so one of the things we've seen a few times over these updates is improved support for the new Mac OS, the different the platforms, the M1, M2, etc. Some bug fixes, of course. With 12.3, what did we get here? Oh yeah, this was one of my favorites here. Downloading the certificate as a PDF. A lot of people don't know that you can do that, but that's a really nice plus. Something we've asked for years. And it's almost been like a non-feature, really. And we can resize slide objects using the handles. Add more components to a simulation slide. So if you needed multiple click boxes, right? Because a lot of times in Windows in particular, like for example, if I was creating a software simulation on how to launch Notepad, I could click here, I could click here, I could run as an administrator. There's multiple ways. I can simply press enter. So you might want to capture those multiple ways in your software simulation. And to do that, you would need multiple click boxes. So that's, a logical thing to include here. Quick start projects from the welcome screen, not a huge thing, but nice to have. And then of course 12.4, the most recent update, which came out this fall. Again, greater support for Mac OS and some of the features here: question pools, random question slides. Improvement for the text-to-speech, which we now know, the text-to-speech user interface has been updated because we are expecting new AI voices to be coming soon, replacing the old Neo Speech or Read Speaker, whatever you want to call them, voices, which are pretty awful. The ability to change your project dimensions. Not huge for me, but I kind of like that functionality where you can resize things, and you've got the padding for different objects. So if you want more white space, you can do that. Blurring content in software simulation, useful if you've got personal, private information. So this is out and definitely out there. And, if you look at the dates of these releases, they've been pretty close to, they've been pretty close to every 90 days or so. We're starting to see that version 12.4. It's been a while for that, so I think we'll probably be seeing 12.5 very soon. Can't promise anything, but that is something that we'll definitely see at some point there for sure. So let's take a look at the comments here real quickly. Yeah, Susan was saying, I remember them showing Charm in Las Vegas when I did my certification. Not much else after. Yeah, it was really quiet. Some of us were more in the know, right? Like, obviously, there was a lot of stuff I couldn't talk about, and lots of people were asking me, of course. And News at 11 was asking about breakpoints. It's not really breakpoints. It's kind of like breakpoints. When you're working in the all-new Adobe Captivate, your canvas in the middle of the slide here, maybe I'll just open it up and share my screen here and show you a little bit of how this works here. So let's go to my desktop here, just opening up Captivate. This is version 12.4 that I'm using right now. Typically, if you have an opportunity to participate in the pre-releases or the betas, if you will, you'll have access to those from a website where you can sign up to be a part of the beta. It's adobeprerelease.com. And you'll see Adobe, I think it literally says Captivate, and then underneath that there's a beta project for Classic, which not much really happens there anymore, but then there's Project Charm as well. And you can go in there and there's a process. It's been so long, I don't remember what it is, but there's a process where you can apply to be a pre-release tester of that software. And if accepted, you'll have access to these new builds before they get released to the public. So you can provide your feedback. I've given lots of feedback for the different versions that have come out over. Saurabh has joined us here. Saurabh is from Adobe. There you go. He's in the chat there. 12.5 will be out January 2025. Okay, so I kind of knew that. I didn't want to say, but when Adobe speaks, we should all listen. So yes, 12.5 is coming. And actually some really cool features, but I won't go into that yet. Just sort of, obviously want to protect my status as a pre-release reviewer here. But, to kind of answer the question about breakpoints, it's not really, they don't really call it breakpoints anymore. Yeah, he's saying he retracted his message. Will most likely be January. So obviously, yeah, got to cover it. So here's how it works. And it doesn't work the way breakpoints used to work. So here's my project here. And let's just put some dummy content here. So maybe I start with a paragraph block. And let's say I want to build that Likert scale rating that one person was asking about. So I might have, a title here, rating, or course rating. Course rating. And we'll just put here, please give us your feedback on this course using the drop down. This is what I sort of thought would be a good way to do it. Now, everything in Adobe Captivate, for those that haven't been using Adobe Captivate for the last couple of years, everything in Adobe Captivate is this concept of a block. So this is a text block, specifically a paragraph block. Within every block, there are a series of components that I can turn on or off. This is mostly to address the concern that designing for responsive design can be very difficult. So if we have everything set up as a component, we can turn them on or off as we need them. The other thing we have here is alignment and spacing. So I've got 50 pixels above and 50 pixels below. Maybe I want to tighten this up a little bit at the bottom, so I'm going to lower that to 10 so that the next block I add will be closer to this introduction here. And maybe I'm going to add an interactive component, which you can see over here in the left-hand toolbar. Everything starts with the left-hand toolbar, and you select something that you want to add. Again, if I want to give a rating, create my own custom rating slide for this, I'm going to choose a drop down there. And I'm going to turn off the label. I don't really need that, but I can select the drop down and we can click on Edit Content. If this happens to be a multi-state object, you'll see the states panel just appear, and you can move that to, perhaps a more convenient spot. And we're going to increase this from 3 items in the drop down to 5. And I'm just going to put in here, excellent, very good, good, not good, and needs improvement. Something like that. So there's our rating scale, if you will. And I can click here just to close that up. And we can edit the text here. We can actually, I think you can. I have to be in the normal state, I think, yeah. So select rating for this course, right? So that's what people will see, and then they can click on the drop down here, which will reveal this, and select something there. And I can add a button at the end of this. And maybe the button, all it is a submit button, which quite frankly doesn't even need to do anything other than maybe go to the next slide, which you would go to the actions component there. I'll leave it for now because I don't have a next slide, so I can't do that. But if I select this rating scale, and I'm publishing this to a learning management system, we'll go into the visual properties of our properties inspector and scroll way down. And you might not see it here. Let me just resize this because the dimensions of my Dell laptop are a little bit different than maybe what YouTube is broadcasting here. Under reporting, we can say include this in the quiz. Now, it's not really a quiz question. It does get 1 point assigned automatically, but I can unselect add to total, and I can select report to LMS, and it's going to assign it an interaction ID. So in your LMS, you could run an interaction report and see what people selected for this interaction. To make it more meaningful, you can replace that interaction ID with something like rating 001 or something like that. So later when I publish this course, it will be, it will be able to capture that data from users. Now, back to the original question that News at 11 was asking. Here's how responsive design works in Adobe Captivate 12. So again, these blocks are designed in such a way that, the components that I turn on, they're sort of stacked all on top of one another. And I can do a few things here. Let's come back to this, but alignment will be a big factor here. So, if I wanted everything to take up 60% of the width of the slide, we can do that, right? So it's nice there. We can select auto layout to have it more proportionally change across the different device types. And that is a selection that you've done on a per block basis there. And then you have these items here. These are your preview modes for desktop, tablet, and mobile phone. And there are some adjustments that you can do on a, for lack of a better word, breakpoint by breakpoint basis. So like, for example, if I was on tablet and I wanted maybe a little bit more space for the title, I can do that. That's something that can be done. It will, you can just kind of make these adjustments across the board here. Let's choose the bottom section here. We can auto fit to height and have it use up the remaining space. Now that's going to affect lots of different things here. Maybe we'll just do auto fit height for both of these and they each get 50%. But you can design this how you wish. And so is it exactly like Breakpoint? Not entirely. It's similar to what we had in Breakpoint. We don't have the ability to drag objects off of the breakpoint like we did in Captivate 8, 9, and 2017. And I guess you could technically do breakpoint in 2019 as well. But it's different, and I think it's more versatile because I don't need to spend a lot of time looking at what my other device types will look like. I just design the slide. And, I can, if I know that, of the 10,000 people, if the 10,000 people that are going to take this course, let's say 9,000 of them are mobile phone, I'm probably going to design with this as my preview here. But, it's not exactly breakpoints. It's similar. Breakpoints, I'm just reading the comments in the chat here. Breakpoints enables developers to not only set the exact screen resolution to adjust objects, but also enables me to add 2 additional sizes, mainly dual screen, so I can add, I can guarantee my work. I understand what you mean. So yeah, we had up to 5 different breakpoints in earlier versions of Captivate. The issue for me for breakpoints, and I think many people would have agreed with me on this, the goal with e-learning often is to rapidly develop this material. So I'm going to spend, let's say someone assigns me a project to build an e-learning course from soup to nuts. I don't want to spend more than a month on it because, the economics of it, right? I'm going to charge someone, let's say, $10,000 for an e-learning course or $20,000 for an e-learning course, depending on the level of interactivity and the complexity of it. If I have to spend 12 months building that e-learning course, I'm going to be pretty much poverty stricken. So that we want to get this stuff done as quickly as possible. So if I can design really just looking at desktop, which might be my primary viewport for my client, I don't want to spend a lot of time going through and seeing and, checking all this stuff. I want to rapidly build this thing out. And I think that's part of the goal of Captivate 12 is to make this easy. Because back in the breakpoint and fluid box days, someone like myself, I had no problem with fluid boxes or even breakpoints for that matter. But I just found that a lot of users were confused by this. E-learning might have been a secondary aspect of what what someone's job was. Like I knew a lot of e-learning designer developers who were primarily classroom instructional designers, and they did a lot of e-learning work on the side. So they weren't going to spend, the time learning what they needed to learn to be proficient in things like breakpoints and fluid boxes. So yeah, Eric is pointing out, I find that these previews for the three different modes are sometimes erratic in how the layout appears when they actually get published. When you see in the software isn't always what is published. Yeah, I think that's probably true. WYSIWYG is one of those things that it's a dream. It's not always a reality. Yeah, and News at 11, that's why I use Breakpoint. It's a long story, but sometimes the mobile browser tag doesn't work, so I manually set everything Breakpoint. So, yeah, it's not perfect. And I think that's been Adobe's goal is they really wanted to offer responsive design because there's very few authoring tools that do true responsive design. If you're a storyline user as well, yeah, the player is responsive design, but your actual course design is fixed aspect ratio. Rise is a good solution, and you can definitely see that Rise has had an influence over the new version of Adobe Captivate, especially with like long scrolling projects and the ability to easily use widgets and just simply populate it with your content. My goal is, I'm like-minded for most of these people, even though I'm very adept at writing my own advanced interactions and building custom solutions. My goal is to do this as simply as possible, always. So when a client comes to me and they are completely satisfied with one of the widgets in Adobe Captivate, I'm going to use the widget because the widget takes me minutes to develop based on my design that I've presented and was approved on. So I don't like to spend a lot of time writing code for my e-learning course. If I can use the out-of-the-box solution, that's me. And again, I'm adept at doing this. So believe me when I tell you that, I think the goal for most e-learning developers is not to be a computer programmer, but rather instead have a solution that does what you need it to do. So there, as an example of how I like to design. Since Saurabh is on the live stream here, so we have Adobe represented, I'll throw this out there. A real thing that holds me back from using Captivate 12 for all of my clients, no audio on the individual click to reveals or nodes, if you will, for the widgets. You give me that, and I'm so happy with that. That will save me tons and tons of time. So I'm looking forward to when that comes out. I know that's on the plan for the future. So yeah, so News at 11. It's confusing. You have to have a deep learning of responsive design and media calls. At my level, I have to have it. So yeah, I agree. A large part of I would say e-learning design and development for me is not spending too much time in the weeds for what is representative of a relatively small group of users. So, for example, I had very early on in my career when I was still working for the last corporation that I worked for, the vice president of HR came to me and said, all the senior vice presidents have tablets, and they would like to be able to use the e-learning course, log into the LMS from their tablet and take their e-learning courses. And have them rearrange the content for responsive design, because these were, I don't know if they were iPads or Nexus 7s or whatever. It was quite a few years ago. But they were, they wanted to have more of a portrait view. And I said, I can do that. But here's the thing. That's going to increase my development time. Right now, I'm designing non-responsive design because of the 1,000 employees in this organization. 993 of them could only access the learning management system from a desktop computer. So there was literally no reason for responsive design. And I said, I can do that, but remember, that's going to increase my development time because now I'm going to need to design in responsive design. Do you really want me to do that for the 7 or 8 senior vice presidents who would require responsive design? Now, I don't work at that organization anymore. Maybe they've transitioned to responsive design today, but at the time, it was literally this, like slightly more than half a dozen users of 1,000 users. Do I want to spend, the extra 30% of my development time satisfying their needs, or do I want to focus on the 909, the 99.5% of the e-learning audience and just designing something that's going to work for them? And the senior vice president of HR agreed with me. Absolutely, no, we're not going to do that. They can sit at their computers in their offices to complete training, especially the mandatory stuff. So, yeah, so I mean, News at 11's also asking about is access to the JavaScript API, which you have. You can add JavaScript to your e-learning course. In fact, in our Adobe professional certification for Adobe Captivate, we have one of our lessons shows you how you can build a random number generator using JavaScript there. The focus of that course is not on JavaScript, but we wanted to cover at least one lesson about it to let you know that that was available. Yeah, Susan's saying here, unfortunately, speed is usually what people want when they want a course developed, and they don't understand how long it can take. Absolutely. But I look at it from their perspective as well, Susan, because, I'm a freelance instructional designer. I think of one story that I have or one anecdote in my repertoire of experience that I've had over the years. I agreed to a project for a client, and I was very kind of loosey-goosey on what the agreement was. This was very early on in my freelance career. And I spent the better part of a year developing what was ultimately only a $6,000 project. Now, I had other projects at the time. I wasn't starving to death during that time. But what a waste of time that was, and I didn't nail down things like the number of reviews. Again, I was still learning a lot of how to be a freelance instructional designer, a freelance developer, and it just was the project that never ended. In fact, I don't even think I delivered the final project. It just kind of faded away. And that person ended up leaving the organization. So I had done all this work. I got a deposit from them, but ultimately I did all this work basically for almost nothing because there was no final delivery of the project, and it just kind of disappeared because again, there was no specific timeline, and it wasn't obviously a mission critical course. It was they saw something another organization had done that I had produced, and they wanted something similar. And, every week or so or every month or so, I'd get some feedback. Hey, can you change this? Can you change that? And she was the only person who saw the course during that time. And eventually she left the organization, and, the corporate memory of working with me basically stopped existing. So it's a challenge for sure. Yeah. And I think, I think Adobe has given us a product that solves the problem. The idea of this twofold approach, like here's Classic, your monthly subscription license gives you access to this Classic software, because in a lot of cases that can be done. Adobe Captivate Classic can do breakpoints for you. If you start a responsive design project, let me just show you here. Oops, wrong button. Desktop here. So let's open Classic. So, I mean, that might be something you ask for while we're waiting for Classic to load. One of my favorite features in the all-new Adobe Captivate is the Help drop-down menu. You can select and provide feedback, and this is going to open up your opportunity to provide Adobe feedback. So if you wanted something more akin to breakpoints, you could post this as a new idea, put in what it is that you're looking for, and submit this using your standard Adobe ID. And the result of that is that, if enough people agree with you, or if there's enough similar feedback from the user base, the engineers at Adobe will consider that and give you that feature at some point. There are examples of this that I know of where I've submitted my feedback on how I think the tool should work. And because, people have voted up, you can say, well, this is important to me or not important to me or critical for me. And that feedback, of course, suddenly becomes a feature that's in the plan for the future. So if I look at all of my feedback that I've given, I have to sign in first. Let me sign in here. Once you see my feedback, you can see that I've been very vocal. Everyone says I'm an apologist for Adobe because I'm a Captivate fanboy. But, like here, for example, I gave some feedback. They wanted more information about this. Poses were missing in the asset library. Turns out that was a known bug. But yeah, so out of tries message on results slide doesn't exist. It's going to. So they put that in the backlog. It's something that they're going to add to Captivate at some point. So you can see these are all the things that I've provided feedback on. Let's go back to Classic here, which, as you can see, I still use. There's clients that I have that are using legacy course designs that I have to support. So if I create a new responsive design project, create, which is fine, it does that, but it's the fluid box thing. And if I want to, I don't do it enough, so I may have to remind myself where I need to go to do this. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Let me just add another blank slide here. Well, it used to be, maybe I'm wrong. There was an opportunity to save as responsive or save as breakpoint or switch to breakpoint or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that went away with an earlier version. Let's try save as. No, that's not it. No. If someone knows, let me know, because I don't. It's not something I've done a lot of, so. I know you can save a standard project, a non-responsive design, as responsive, but I always thought you could convert to breakpoints here. And I'm not seeing that now. Maybe that's something that did go away. I know it was from one of the drop-down menus. Oh, yeah, here it is here. So under the project drop-down menu, switch to breakpoint mode. It will prompt you to save your work, right? So let's just save this as a project. I'll just put it on my desktop for right now. So, to address the question that, can I do breakpoint in Adobe Captivate in 2024? Yes and no. Yes, in that, yes, you have to use the classic software, switch to breakpoint, mode. It's reminding me that all my fluid boxes are going to go away, and it will load the project, and then you'll see it there. Right, so now I have the breakpoint mode, which is our 3 device sizes, plus the opportunity to add custom sizes to be whatever I wish. And obviously it works as you would do it in as early as Captivate 8, for example, which is when breakpoint responsive design came out. The one thing that the new Adobe Captivate I think does better is the height of the project. So in the new Adobe Captivate, if I'm building something here and I just keep adding blocks to this, it's just going to increase the height of my project, similar to what you might expect in Rise, right? So if you're used to articulate Rise, you can build this long scrolling. They called it infinite scrolling for a bit there, but I think long scrolling is a better way to describe it there. Yeah, it's been a while. News at 11, it's been a while since I've done anything in breakpoint, so I'd forgotten how to do it. But yeah, there it is. That's how it's done. Well, guys, that's the hour. It's now 11. Actually, it's a little bit after 11. But I just want to say it's been a pleasure chatting with you. It's nice to hear, some feedback from folks, see where they're at with the all-new Adobe Captivate. And as Saurav has confirmed from Adobe, nice to see that he jumped on. With everything hopefully in place for 12.5 to come out in sometime in January. No guarantees, of course, because with software development, anything can happen, right? So something doesn't work, or there are too many bugs, or whatever it is. They may have to delay the release of it, but if you're like me, I'm pretty happy about the release schedule of the updates. I know we're about to hit 12.5. It's basically less than a year and a half since the release of the original product. And to be at update 5 at this point is pretty impressive, because it took years for Adobe Captivate 2019 to get that level of updates. There weren't a lot of updates during those 4 years or so that that product was sort of the main focus of the Adobe eLearning group. So nice to see that they are committed to working hard at releasing new versions of Adobe Captivate for you, and getting us closer to that goal of software parity. All the features of Classic now in the new version. So I think we're still a few years away, but each step is a step closer to that goal. So again, just a reminder, please subscribe to my channel if you like what I'm doing here today, as well as the regular weekly tutorials that I try to do. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video if it's something you've enjoyed, and by all means share this video or any of my videos on YouTube, all 790 videos or whatever it is at this point, with your e-learning colleagues. And we'll look forward to seeing you again real soon.
If you thought this video was helpful, please like and share it with your colleagues. If you need help with Adobe Captivate, hire Paul for one-on-one instruction. Paul's goal is to focus on lessons based on your specific needs. Visit his website at captivateteacher.com. And don't forget to subscribe to his YouTube channel.